steady? Go.
Beginning.
Okay. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube. Today we have a very special guest.
Karen Sawyer.
My mom. And so I got I put a poll on my Instagram and was asking people what they wanted to see next on my YouTube. And a lot of people had questions about foster care. And I know that my mom gets a lot of questions on like Facebook, or friends of hers who have questions. And so we thought we'd just do a video on it and answer some like common questions and go from there. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I have this question on my phone, so I won't
There's a
forget.
fly.
We must know. Okay, so your first question that we have for you is, how did you get started, or what made you want to do foster care?
Well, I am an early childhood education major in college. I was a teacher in my former life. And so I've always had an affinity for children. But I also, when I was growing up, my own parents were approached about a classmate of mine who was in need of care. And so it always kind of sparked my interest about it.
Mm-hmm.
But my own folks decided that it probably wasn't the best idea. And I always kind of wondered why. Because I thought, you know what, we did have a really good home and I had really great parents, and I thought, you know, maybe when you do have that you should share it with the world or put it out there so that others who need it can count on you. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what got me thinking about it.
My next question is, for how long did it take you to get licensed, and I don't remember about what year did you get licensed in?
It's kind of a long process. It took probably 6 months, I guess, to get licensed. Lots and lots of paperwork and
Meetings.
lots of background checking. If you remember right, all of you kids had to be interviewed by someone. Fingerprinting.
Safety checks, like around the
safety
home.
checklists. Yes, they came in to check out the home and make sure everything was safe. And like, do you have your fire extinguisher? Do you have, are you, all your electricity or your electrical is up to date? All of your, lots of strange things that you never would think. I mean, they opened your drawers and looked in your drawers and yeah. So I would say it was about 6 months.
And what year did we get licensed?
2011.
As if I did anything. Okay, and then how often do you have to renew your license, and what is that kind of like renewing?
Well,
go through all that paperwork
you have
again?
to do it yearly. They come out and visit with you annually. And then every 2 years, you have a more extensive, it's not 2 years, 5 years. Every 5 years, you have a more extensive where they come and do all the interviewing again and background checks and that kind of stuff. And then there are certain classes that you have to take.
And your spouse.
And your spouse, yes. Have to take like a car seat class and a CPR class and a shaken baby class and a fetal alcohol class. And you also have to do 12 hours of continuing ed every year. So, yeah, lots of schooling.
The next question I have is, how many children have we had in and out of our house? If you had to guess, because there's a lot.
I know the exact number.
Of course you know.
There have been 28 children to come through our house. Those are all varied. We have had some kids who have come for a weekend. We have had some kids who stay for 2 weeks. We have had some children who are there for 4 to 6 months, which is the typical amount of time because the court likes to see the case figured out or something done one way or another with these kids within 6 months. That's usually the length of the case plan. And we have also had some children who have ended up staying.
We'll get to that later.
Yes.
With that being said, and you just going off of timeline, I know how this goes, but I kind of want you to explain to everyone else who doesn't know, like how the pickup process goes, or like how you go from having a child in your home to them all of a sudden either going back to their parents, getting transitioned to a different foster home, or like how quick it happens, if it's slow, if it's fast, if it's...
that varies slightly too. Sometimes they will say, you've got a week. Sometimes they will call and they will say, we will be there to pick them up later today.
I feel like more times than not, it's quicker rather than
more times than not. Yes, after a court appearance or a court hearing, the judge will say within 24 hours the child needs to be returned to the parent, or if it is transitioning to another home, sometimes they will stretch that out a little bit. With our last one, she had been with us from birth, so and she was being transitioned to a possible permanency option, and they extended that out where we met them. The child went and spent a day with them. The child went and spent a weekend with them. And then pretty shortly thereafter, we transitioned over to permanency, or for her to go and stay with them. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is kind of hard, and you can be kind of vague. Like, you don't have to go into detail because I know that would be hard. But what kind of situations do these kids come from? Like, what are their backgrounds? Some of the kids that we've had. And be brutally honest, but you don't have to like go into detail,
Yeah.
Because
protect their identities.
Right.
Yeah, got it. Well, usually the situation is not good.
No.
Okay, because
There's
these
a reason
kids don't come to
us.
Yes, these kids do not come to us because everything is going well or in their homes. So, unfortunately, a lot of these children have parents who have alcohol and addiction problems. It seems lately that is the largest problem that we're running into. But there is also issues of abuse, be it physical or emotional, or sometimes neglect, sometimes parents might leave their child in the care of someone who is
not ideal.
Yes.
Not ideal.
Yes. Or has some of the same issues, drug or alcohol abuse kind of thing. That it's never good. It's never good, but those are just some of the things that we see.
Right.
Usually lots of trauma in their background too. And the older they get, probably the more trauma there has been. So yeah.
Right.
And we've had kids from the age of, we've picked them up from the hospital, from birth. And our oldest, I think, was 7.5 at the time. 7.5 at the time, so.
All right. My next question is visits, and I know it varies, but like on average, how often do you have visits, and what are they like?
Well, the younger the child is, the more frequent they like to have visits.
For bonding?
Yes, for bonding purposes. So should it, if it's an infant, they will probably do 2 or 3 visits a week. Typically those visits last anywhere from an hour to 3.
And they're at like a center, right?
Sometimes they can be done like at the courthouse down. They have a special room, a playroom kind of thing. They also can be done in centers, like childcare centers, like the YMCA or something like that, or like Kindred, which is that's what Kindred is it's a place for supervised visitation for children who are in care. So.
The next question I put in here because I think it needs to be addressed, but how do you deal with awkward parent interactions? And I know you don't ever, my mom is very, she just doesn't get awkward because she thinks it's only awkward if you're awkward. And so I know is going to say like, oh, visits, they're not that bad or they're not awkward, but I'm telling you, I've been to like where my mom would go pick up a foster kid, and I think personally that it's awkward, a little bit awkward.
Well,
and so how do you deal with that?
I wouldn't say it's awkward. I would say it can be uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable because you are taking care of their child.
Yeah.
And
I'd say most of the time they're very thankful.
Yes.
But sometimes there have
been times and situations where the parent is really pissed off at me because I have their child.
Right.
And they take out some of their anger and frustration with the situation that they are in on me as the foster parent, or they see me as the evil one who's taken their kid.
Even though that's not the case.
So most of the time they're very thankful and appreciative.
Which was, I think, kind of probably the most surprising thing for me. I thought before, I was young when we started, but like I thought before we even did foster care that most of the time they would be bitter or mad at the situation, not necessarily at you, but at the situation. And I think that's what was most surprising to me, is really how thankful they truly are, and kind of how much parents kind of attach or talk to you or communicate with you about what they're going through.
Yeah, I have had that happen too. Not only does it end up that you're fostering their child, but you kind of end up mentoring and fostering the parent as well. Yeah.
Which is, I think, also something that needs to be talked about, is because a lot of these parents who have lost a child or their child ends up in foster care they also don't come from like the best situational backgrounds.
Right.
And so I think someone like you who, obviously is a halfway decent person if you're getting your children, but someone like you, as like a role model or like ask questions about,
For sure.
if that makes sense.
Because it seems like children who end up in foster care, their parents were in foster care, and their parents before that it's very
cyclic.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So that also, I think, is something to be talked about and acknowledged too, because
yes, you are going to end up having to mentor or at least interact with in some positive way with the parents.
Right. So I only have 2 more questions because we literally could talk about this all day, and I know there are a million questions. So the next question I have is about adoption and how it has been for us. And I'm going to insert some pictures of my brother here so you can see how cute they are. But just kind of talk about adoption, the whole process, and how it came about with Jackson and Lee.
Well, we never, it was never our intention to adopt. when we got into fostering. But as it has turned out, there were at this point 2 situations, 2 little boys whose life circumstances brought them to us, and by the grace of God somehow.
Here we go. She wasn't gonna cry. Here we go.
By the grace of God, somehow they ended up being able to stay with us. And so after a very long fostering period with the first one, my first adopted son, Liam, he was about 8 months when he came to us, and I believe he was just over 2 when it was finally finalized. It was a long process. His biological mom was given a lot of opportunities, many opportunities to straighten things out, and unfortunately she just couldn't do it. Sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. So when she approached me and said, if I can't do this, would you be willing? It kind of took me back, because I was just thinking, she's working her plan and she's trying, but she can see the writing on the wall, and she would like for us to be his forever family. And so I went home and asked your dad, and lo and behold, he was like, well, of course, if he can stay and be here forever, then that's what we want to do. So we adopted him. The second situation, my second son that we've adopted, Jack, his mother had previous children whom she lost her parental rights on, and so he went directly into the foster system, and her rights were terminated right away. And then his dad was identified and given the option or case plan to work, and after about 4 months or so, he decided that he couldn't handle it on his own, and so he signed his parental rights away when Jack was about 8.
Well, we got Jack from the hospital.
8 to 10. Yes, we got him from the hospital, but he signed his parental rights away when Jack was about 8 months old, I'd say, because it was August. And then at that point, after the parents' rights are terminated, then the whole adoption process starts.
But something we should address is, just because we were Jack's foster parents at the time doesn't mean that, like, technically we were next in line. I feel like the system literally will try to find any kind of blood relation, whether it be a grandparent or I feel like any kind of relationship. If you can find some way that you're related, like, you definitely have the option, or you will be considered the first option after parents sign their parental rights away. And so I just think that's something that we need to make clear, that it's very hard, or in a lot of situations, it doesn't even come, in foster care, it doesn't really come to adoption with the foster parents that they were placed with, because they find some kind of family member first.
A grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a in-law.
Literally anyone.
They're exhaust every avenue to place that child with a familial relationship to the child, rather than have the foster parents be a permanency option.
Which is very tough. And
it is very tough, because they might call you and say, oh, we have a grandparent who
or you think you're
is
in the
maybe
clear.
interested. Yeah.
You think you're in the clear, and maybe that you'll be the next option, and they'll be like, oh, we found
Yes.
We found someone, which was hard for us. Just to address it really quick, is my mom and dad adopted Liam first, and then Jackson came shortly thereafter. And so we got what we would call lucky 2 times in a row. And so once we started, or my parents started fostering after them, it kind of was hard for us because we had to realize or come to terms with, most of the time you don't get to keep every kid that comes in and out of your house. And we forgot about that a little bit, I would say.
And another thing that happens too is that you may adopt a child out of the foster system, and then 3, 4, 5 years later, that parent has another child, and they do call and say, hey, we have a sibling to the child who you've adopted. Are you a permanency option, or are you interested? And so that can get very, very tricky too as well.
Right.
Because with our older of the 2, Liam, his mother has had 4 more children since, and all 4 of those children are also in the foster system. I know where they are and who they're with, and so
and
if
hard.
and when he is old enough to understand or wants to know, then we can put him in contact with those siblings.
And obviously one day he'll for sure know, because me and my siblings, so I'm the youngest, and I'm 23, and I have 3 older siblings. And so it was funny because when Liam started preschool, like his social interactions, she'd be like, well, he's really good at talking to the teachers, because he was so used to just talking to his adult siblings that he didn't really know how to socialize with kids his age.
No.
And so
Lord knows he's gotten real good at that.
Yes,
too now. So.
the most social kid you'll ever meet. But almost he is. He's like you, I think.
They bring a lot of joy to our family. That's all I know. And I never intended to start another family at 52. So.
No, and there's never a dull moment. That's for sure.
No, that's for sure.
Okay, and my final question, which I think is probably the most important question, is what do you have to say to people who constantly say, and I've heard people say this multiple times, and people have asked you and Dad, and it's just been a topic of conversation a lot, is people who constantly tell you, like, I don't know how you do it, I'd never be able to give the kids back, that kind of stuff.
I get that comment every time.
Right.
And my short answer is, you don't have an option. The court tells you what's going to happen and when you have to give them back, and you have to give them back. That's just all there is to it. Believe me, I've had notions of running away and and hiding somewhere and hoping that they can't find us, whatever. But
keep them all.
Yeah. And yeah. But the short answer is you don't have a choice. Okay. The long answer is foster care is hard. It's very, very hard. And no matter what you do, if you're doing it well, you get attached. You get attached and you fall in love. And then it might happen that they gotta go. And a little piece of your heart goes with everyone, no matter who or when or why. A little piece of your heart goes with them when they go, and that's the hard part. But
you always have said, that if you can change someone's life, or if you can give them a little sliver, or just a memory or a remembrance of what it's like to truly know love
And to have a little bit of normalcy and to have
Right.
a family and a safe place, then
Ever since we started, like I
Then
always
it's
remember you
worth
saying
it.
that. Yeah.
it's worth it.
Right.
But that's all I got to say about that.
Well, I have something to say. So, as you guys all know, I'm pregnant and having a child, and my mom, obviously, my brother and his wife are also having a baby. We're having them like back to back, basically. And so this superwoman herself, after, what has it been, 9 whole years and 20 some children and 2 of her own now, finally retired from foster care. And you deserve someone to show appreciation and say thank you. And you've made a difference, even though
Well, thank
it's
you.
very, very hard. You've made a difference. And we're hoping this video
Now I get to be a grandma.
We're hoping this video inspires, or at least gives you guys some insight as to what foster care really is. And it's not easy, but it's so worth it. And I know that Shane and I have talked about it.
It's a beautiful thing.
And, you know, if you have the means to help, then I think it's important to help. And I know it's not for everyone, but we're hoping that this video answered some of your questions and that it inspired some of you to be like Superwoman herself.
I'm no superwoman.
To the rest of us,
I'm the crazy kid lady.
that is. She literally.
Okay, am I done?
Every kid. Yes, you're done.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Well, don't we have to practice a little first?
No, we just wing it.
I'm eating licorice.
Welcome back to our YouTube. We're the Bopsy Twins. This haircut really makes me look like you. Okay, you can't hug all the good lighting.
Well, I look like I got a really fat face.
Why do you think I sat back here?
Oh.
Okay. You want me to sit up front?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then at least you can blame it on being pregnant.
Okay, I'll talk and do the intro and then I'll ask
What
you
if I finish
questions.
this first?
Okay.
Okay.